Today we're trying the €220 5-course tasting menu at Brothers in Munich, Germany, a modern European restaurant with 1 Michelin star. Brothers is located in Munich's Schwabing neighborhood and was opened in December 2022 by twin brothers Markus and Tobias Glass. And the restaurant earned its first Michelin star in 2023, only about 3 months after opening. The kitchen is led by chef Daniel Bodamer, and the cooking has a classical European foundation with a lot of international influences. The restaurant itself is also much more relaxed than what you might expect from fine dining. It has a modern, almost urban feel, and there are counter seats where you can actually watch the kitchen work. But what I found most interesting about the tasting menu is how most of the courses are presented. They take one main ingredient and prepare it in two completely different ways. So you're basically seeing two sides of the same ingredient in every course. When I visited, I went with the 5-course tasting menu. They also had an a la carte menu, and the 5-glass wine pairing was available for €110. Before the actual courses started, they brought out 2 amuse-bouche. The first was a small tartlet with cured beef, horseradish, radish, and nori jam. This was rich, salty, packed with umami, and basically the perfect bite. The second was a crostade filled with king crab, avocado, and celery. This one was much simpler and more delicate, letting the sweetness of the crab stand out. Then came the bread service with focaccia, brioche fouettée, and butter. The focaccia was warm, soft, and had a nice crust, while the brioche was much more richer, buttery, and incredibly flaky. And alongside was a Parisian-style gnocchi covered in parmesan foam and spring leeks. The gnocchi was so soft that it basically dissolved in my mouth. I have to say that even before the first official course, the meal was already off to a very strong start. The first course was blue lobster, presented in 2 ways. The main preparation had blue lobster over green asparagus and Japanese koshi hikari rice, a high-quality short-grain rice commonly used for sushi, along with caviar, a pea and shallow vinaigrette, tarragon, and yuzu kosho. There was a lot going on, but the lobster stood out, with richness from the caviar and a little acidity and heat from the yuzu kosho. My only issue was that it was a little messy to eat. Everything was laid on top of each other, so once you started cutting into it, some of the caviar would spread around the plate. Then on the side was a fragrant lobster bisque with more peas and asparagus. I really like the idea here because you first experience the lobster in a more delicate preparation, and then immediately get this much deeper and richer interpretation through the bisque. The second course focused on red mullet. The first preparation was lightly seared and finished with a herb crust, then served with baby artichokes, marinated lettuce hearts, and ceppiolini, which are basically baby squid. The squid was sliced extremely thin, almost like noodles, and gently cooked in olive oil to keep it soft. There was a lot of technique going into this plate, but it still felt centered around the fish. Then came the second preparation, a tempura version served with freshly grated almond butter and XO sauce. Going from the more refined, delicate first plate to something crispy and much more intense in flavor made the course a lot more interesting. Next was a turbot, again served in 2 ways. The first preparation had turbot with a champagne sauce, razor clams, preserved lemon, and tarragon oil. They actually ferment the lemons for about 2 weeks, which gives them more depth and acidity than just juicing fresh lemon. This was a very classic combination at its core, perfectly cooked fish with a rich French sauce. The second preparation combined turbot trimmings with baby zucchini, fennel, and carrot. I really liked that they were also using different parts of the fish instead of only serving the prime fillet and discarding the rest. The fourth course was saddle of Bavarian venison. The main preparation came with 2 types of broccoli, roasted anise couscous, chanterelle mushrooms, and pickled caper cherries. The venison was cooked beautifully, and the mushrooms and darker flavors made this feel much more earthy than the seafood courses before it. Then the second preparation was almost like a venison terrine with a touch of foie gras, more chanterelles, and pepper cherries. So you go from a very clean piece of venison to something much richer and more concentrated. They also brought out these little French-style potato balls on the side, which were honestly really good. It literally exploded in my mouth. And finally, the fifth course focused on strawberries. The first dessert had vanilla mousse with pumpkin seed praline in the center, topped with strawberry sorbet and yuzu. This was sweet and creamy, but the acidity from the strawberry and yuzu kept it feeling fresh. Then on the side was a herb ice cream with creme chantilly and more fresh strawberries. I like that instead of simply giving you another sweet strawberry dessert, the herb ice cream was much more aromatic and slightly savory. But the meal still wasn't over. They finished with a full selection of petit sucré. There were freshly baked madeleines, a dacquoise made with almond flour and vanilla mascarpone, a canendel bordeaux that is caramelized on the outside and fluffy inside. And finally, the Paris Bresse. This was filled with roasted hazelnut ganache. Overall, I thought Brothers was an excellent meal. What stood out most to me was the idea of taking one main ingredient and showing it in two completely different ways. With the lobster, you go from something delicate to a rich bisque. With the red mullet, you go from lightly cooked fish to crispy tempura. And even the strawberry dessert gives you two completely different interpretations. It made the tasting menu feel much more interactive because you're constantly comparing the two preparations and deciding which one you prefer. And there really wasn't a weak course for me. Even smaller things like the little French potato balls ended up being memorable. For me, this is exactly the type of meal where having one Michelin star makes sense. Brothers gets a solid 10 out of 10.